But I did pick this particular picture to start this program. If you notice, I have been to Montana before, but not this part. I did what other tourists do. And you don't get to meet fine people like you, so thank you for coming. Anyway, I'm very proud to have been selected for an open-air one-month art residency program. And before I start my PowerPoint, which Lizzie is going to make sure doesn't go to sleep on me, I want to tell you a little bit about art residencies in particular, because you might be dreaming of going off to an art residency, or you might know someone who would love that experience. And as Tony mentioned, right now, the call for next year's residencies through Open Air Montana is live. So visit it. I have had the good fortune to have done, like 12 art residencies. So although I'm hardly an expert, I can tell you there are all sorts of art residencies, some that last only a week, some that last a year, some that have huge participation fees, and others that award a stipend. There are ones that require letters of recommendation, and some actually want a detailed project description. But some are in rural areas, and some are in foreign cities. There is not one website where they're all listed, but one of the best is the Artist Community Alliance. And last year, that's where I found the call for this art residency. And like I said, it is live. And I'm not the only artist that was selected. As she was saying, there are a lot of artists every year. They get placed in various locations in western, primarily in western Montana. But there are all sorts of other residencies at the Artist Community Alliance. So no matter who you are or how old you are, because I am old, don't count yourself out. You too can go on an artist residency or be responsible for sending a friend or family member on an adventure. So tell everyone, and I want to sing the praises of Open Air and invite you all to support this resource in your area. And they even brought the clear plastic plates for you to put the green into the coffers to continue bringing artists like me to Montana and bringing yourself experiences through the workshops and presentations that artists from elsewhere bring here. So now, a little bit of, it hasn't gone to sleep, very good. A little about my own experience. Like I said, I'm old. I wasn't always old. I was very small there. I was born in June of 1959 in Columbus, Ohio, to a German immigrant who had been in the country for a whole 6 years and his brand new bride from West Virginia. My dad, of course, was still in college, and he would continue his education until I was going into the 3rd grade. And by that time, he had a PhD in education and relocated us to Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. My parents started, though, a summer studies program in 1964 to take students to Salzburg, Austria, studying for college credit a variety of different subjects, including German and music. I mean, Salzburg is the home of Mozart, and other relevant studies for the summer. So I spent most of my youth in dreadful, horrible days in high school and in glorious summer days in Europe. As proof, this is what JFK Airport looked like in 1970. I'm the oldest of 4 girls. Anyway, back when I was in middle school, I wanted to grow up to be a museum curator. And I knew that life would finally start when I got off to college. I was totally wrong about my career ambitions. I learned that in grad school. In my very first art administration class, I learned I do not want to be a museum curator. I don't want to write grants. I do not want to read insurance policies. I do not want to fill out condition reports, ingoing, outgoing, no going at all. But I was definitely right about life starting in college. My very second week at The Ohio State University back in Columbus, I met Steve Dingman, who has now been my husband for 44 years. We met at the Ohio State versus Oklahoma football game in 1977. And that was before I finished my degree in medieval and Renaissance studies. Mom and Dad sent me to get that illustrious MRS degree. You know, the one that's probably before a lot of your names? Yeah, well, medieval Renaissance studies, got it. Well, at that football game, OSU lost, but I definitely won. Anyway, Steve continued in grad school, and every fall we would go to the Ohio State Fair and walk through the art and industry building, admiring all the handicrafts, especially the sewing and embroidery. And I would say, oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that. And he'd be behind me saying, put your money where your mouth is. So, being in grad school and having absolutely no money, I went to the library and repeatedly checked out the Reader's Digest Complete Guide to Needlework. Because, of course, that was the Bible of all Bibles. And I made one of everything in the book. And the next year I even got a blue ribbon on my pillowcase. Some projects I liked well enough, some not so much, but I was left with the desire to keep on stitching, to explore fiber and stitch, and, well, life got in the way. Steve finished his PhD in civil engineering and accepted a job at a coastal engineering company in Columbia, South Carolina. So we moved. We thought we knew what we were doing. We didn't. We bought a house, we started a family, and I decided, without any prior experience whatsoever, to become an antique dealer. So I went to auctions and yard sales, and I bought old pictures, ones that need, a piece of glass fixed or a new mat. And I was just going to fix them up and sell them through antique malls while I raised my little family. That's all I ever had in mind. Had anybody told me then that by 2001, I'd be running a full-service custom picture framing location with 14 people on payroll, 8 of which enjoyed fully covered health insurance, a retirement plan, and paid vacation, I would have laughed hilariously. I can't do that. Absolutely, I can't do that alone. But apparently I could with Steve, because I was not the only one that learned that the career ambitions were, something that was going south. He hated his job. 3 years into it, the company was going through a merger, and like he said, my job is secure, but I hate these new people. So he quit his job and joined me in my frame shop. We are highly educated people for, a job that doesn't require a high school diploma. But we've been working together until a year and a half ago when we finally retired. That's 36 years of running Mouse House. This was our location in Columbia. We lived above our shop. And everything was going well, although burnout was absolutely a problem. And I was still silently dreaming about embroidery and art. And I looked back and like, well, I got a degree studying and looking at a lot of art. I sure as heck framed a lot of art. The one thing I hadn't done, though, was I hadn't admitted I wanted to be an artist when I grew up. And I rationalized that I couldn't be an artist. After all, my last art class was in the 8th grade. So I couldn't be an artist. But then finally I admitted I wanted to be an artist. And I got a studio, and I went to the studio, and I simply taught myself, like the stitch, how to be an artist. My studio was behind that wall right there. It was a cooperative studio with 12 other very professional artists. And it was very scary because none of them were fiber artists. And one lady said, oh, you do fiber thingies? Okay. But they taught me a lot, even by their negative talking. But there was another advantage. Twice a year, the group showed together an exhibit. So, and I was expected to make something for these exhibits, and the exhibits all had themes. Well, one year, the theme was the blues on Lady Street. Now, they'd have meetings in the day. Well, of course, I'm working full-time, so I don't attend the meeting. I just get the note. Theme for this coming show is the blues on Lady Street. Well, in a meeting, they selected this theme because, well, the gallery was on Lady Street. And the city was doing all sorts of construction and streetscaping right outside the door, making it a little difficult to get into the gallery. So they're singing the blues. I missed that part. All I heard was the blues. And I created one of my very first art installations. This is Blues Chapel. And I created it right there in my little studio space. And it was the only time I was allowed to use real candles. For some reason, galleries and museums just don't let you light 100 little votive candles. But anyway, Blues Chapel was a wonderful installation. And a executive director from a nearby museum offered me a show 2 months later in a large space. So from chapel, I sort of had to build a church. But she encouraged me to write an exhibition proposal. And so I did. So Blues Chapel has been a lot of different places. This is when it was in Denton, Texas. And here's another shot in another South Carolina location. And through working in installation art, I was also learning what installation art even is. It is one whole unit, an environment. No matter how many individual components there are, it is one work of art. It is necessarily temporary, almost always site-specific, but most importantly, spatially transformative. And by that I mean I use the entire room, the space, the air, in order to create an environment with the intention for my audience to experience it. And I know the Blues Chapel was very successful because even in a gallery situation or a museum, people started whistling as if they were going to real church. So I learned a lot about installation art, and I've been making installations ever since. This is another installation. It's called Last Words. My intention was to transform the gallery space into one site-specific temporary environment, one piece of art, that transformed that space into an experience that would be like walking through an actual cemetery. So what you're seeing here are a lot of chiffon banners on which I have free motion stitched collected epitaphs. Just like you're walking through a cemetery, you don't think to yourself, oh, let me read. You read automatically. Rest in peace, gone but not forgotten. So walking through my installation is like walking through the cemetery and the last words left by other people. The art quilts that I made were crayon on fabric, on vintage linens, and the angel images were xylene photo transfers on printmaking paper of various sculptures from cemetery. But one of the best parts, or my favorite part of this installation, see all the flowers? They were collected from cemetery dumpsters. And they were dissected and washed in the bathtub and placed there intentionally because the 90-degree angle of the gallery doesn't exist. It's more like a gentle landscape. Let's face it, walking through most cemeteries, you've got all sorts of flowers. So this was, again, my intention to transform this space into an experience for people to walk through and feel what I hoped they would get. Well, As an artist, though, I'm always asking that typical question, and I'm sure many of you are artists and ask yourself the same question. What if I... And in this case, those flowers, I said they were my favorite. I would ask, what if I try stitching them on a water-soluble stabilizer and making garments out of them? And it works, and there's several, almost a dozen of those. But I had lots more flowers, and what if I used the flowers for one of my first performance art pieces? Here is me trying to pretend I am a dead teenager named Ophelia, drowning for love of Hamlet in the Shakespearean tragedy. It was so much fun. People ask me later, didn't you get pickled in that water? Oh, there's no water! It was a blast. Anyway, that's some of my what-if questions. And here is another installation. This one is called Anonymous Ancestors. Remember when Lizzie was talking about my obsession with anonymous pictures? Oh yeah, it's an obsession. It was my way of figuring out what to do with those unknown people, staring out of a glossy piece of paper that didn't have names. Those forgotten families, those uncelebrated birthdays, the antique cars when they were brand new, the weddings from past marriages, and all sorts of vacation pictures. And as an artist, I would ask myself, who were they? What lives did they live? Why were they forgotten? Why didn't their family want them? Who is Aunt May? So there are over 350 framed pictures in this exhibit. And on each one, I have collaged a phrase, letter by letter, because in another life I was a kidnapper and I love ransom notes. And I give each one of these people a flash fiction life in just a few little statements like town drunk, pillar of the community, person of my family to go to college, virgins on her honeymoon night. I've created this installation.
Are all those photos on fabric?
No, those are the actual photos in frames. The fabric, there's lots of fabric in here, but that's not it. The room is intended to look like a stereotypical grandmother's Victorian-inspired parlor with walls of family photos. And I have added fabric. Yes, I have scanned a lot of anonymous photos in order to do the upholstery on some of the folding chairs. There's also fabric in the garments to which I have stitched with buttons, dozens upon dozens of black and white photographs. But also there's a curtain. That is a 15.5 foot long curtain of anonymous pictures that were stitched on a tearaway stabilizer as a grid, meant for people to stand in the present, look at the not so distant past, but see those images faded on the wall as shadows going into oblivion. So there were many parts of this, and this one's been all over the place too, but like the last words, I keep asking what if questions, and Anonymous Ancestors morphed as well. It morphed into the point where, I know where I am. I was asked to do a TEDx talk. It's called Precious, Making a Plan for Your Precious Possessions. And it can be accessed off of my website. It, again, asks all the questions of who are these people, what can I do with them, how can I give them a second life? Okay, so some of them wouldn't necessarily like to be labeled town drunk, but maybe I was right. So these were installations that I have done. Now, not all of my installations started off as grand plans. This is a little basket, and I just put some sewing thread that I had unraveled from wooden thread spools so that I could make Christmas ornaments out of them. And we have some of those in the back. Well, I put the little thread in the little basket. I took a picture of it. I called it threads gathering my thoughts. And then I realized, okay, I have probably captured a millisecond. What if I want a whole minute? Oh, I think I'm going to have to make it bigger. So I got 4 baskets, and I put it by this sculptural unit called The Nature of Memory, with a fake brain and a lot more thread, and a cascade and all that stuff. And yeah, I have a whole minute. What if I would like to have people experience it like walking through their own brain? Oh my God! That's 130 baskets suspended, and you do learn that the next day, after you've been up and down a ladder several times, and you're old, you hurt. But that's 130 baskets suspended with miles and miles of thread raveling through them, so that people could walk in and under, seeing the dangling threads as if Alzheimer's moment. Plus, after all, threads, gathering my thought, threads, my fiber arts are part of a lot of things that we talk about on a day-to-day basis. Phrases like spinning a tall tale, also known as a yarn. Weaving in traffic, cut from the same cloth, the rug pulled out from under one's feet. Hanging by a thread, with every fiber of my being. But mostly I was just thinking about what these threads would look like as thoughts, as if the squiggly lines above our Charlie Brown character in the cartoon, yeah, that's a little thread. How to take that inspiration and make it an experience for people. Now, during the pandemic, I was also thinking quite a lot. I think we all were. There were probably, like lots of you, there were moments of fear, lots of worry. Everything got canceled. And my frame shop was required to be closed for like 3 months because I was non-essential. It's always nice to know. It produced plenty of anxiety. So to calm myself, I thought, what if I try to tap into the meditative process that Buddhist monks, who I saw from Atlanta, make these beautiful concentric circles in sand as a way to calm themselves. And I thought, well, how would I make a mandala?
Oh, gorgeous.
And yet, still part of my artistic practice of giving second life to old materials. These are found objects hand-stitched to sections of vintage quilts. The quilts I used primarily were ones that have outlived their usefulness as a blanket. And some of the work I've created while I'm here, this is a series that debuted at the Philadelphia Museum of Art Craft Show and was gone on to the Smithsonian Craft Show. And I now have gallery representation with this work in 3 different states. But best of all, I used pieces like this on my application for open air, which brought me here. So I'm just going to show you some of the mandalas that I actually had on this laptop to share. Here is one, I love this one. Those are squeaky toy crabs. Not everybody has artwork that squeaks. I love dominoes. You have to drill holes in a lot of things in order to stitch them down. But I buy by the handful 1/8 inch and 3/16 inch drill bits. They don't always last very long. This was a commission by the Steinway Company. They saw one of my mandalas where I had the felt hammers, and they said, well, we like that, but we would like a mandala with only Steinway parts. I'm like, yeah, right. Where am I going to get a Steinway? Oh, we'll give you one. And so I drove up to Charlotte, and they put a upright Steinway in my van. And that's when I learned that if it has a broken soundboard, even a low-end Steinway is more expensive to repair than to replace. So that is all 88 keys, and they are ivory. At least the white ones are. I think the black ones are something else. Hand-stitched, because there are 5 holes drilled through each one, onto the background in the correct order of all 88 keys.
Wow.
Here's another commission. A restaurant wanted a mandala but they wanted all of the items to be food related. So there are all sorts of things like bottle caps and olive forks and plastic copper colored knives and Lord knows what all else. Some of them aren't that large.
No.
Some of them I have altered my found object. That is an incredible collection of plastic army men that have been spray painted and all hand stitched to the back of a quilt that happened to be blue. I adore Pez dispensers. This was one of my favorites. 2 Christmases ago, I took apart my piano. It had a broken soundboard. You know, when I die, it would go to a landfill. And I cut those keys. They still got lots of holes drilled in them to create this mandala. But of course, the what if question. What if I can't use all these found objects for a mandala? So I started making tidal waves where the organization was not as important. You just have a mess of found objects. So tidal waves, found objects. Okay, where am I? Oh,
And is it fiber art because it's stitched onto cloth?
yeah,
That's
it's
what
stitched onto, the substrata is a vintage quilt.
I
Oh yeah,
see.
there's lots and lots of stitching.
Uh-huh.
Every one of those objects, if it didn't have a hole, had to get drilled so they could be stitched on. I'm not gluing anything.
Right.
And the button borders, yeah, they're all stitched on too. So it's fiber because it is stitched. Okay, where am I? Oh, I was going to tell you, I really would have liked to make mandalas here in Montana. That would have been so much fun. But you wouldn't believe the stash and the amount of space the stash takes up. So instead, I have been to almost every thrift store here in this area collecting for future mandalas, so Montana will be going home with me. Okay, I would have shared pictures of the series that I have been working on while I'm here, but then the idea was like, why, since we have the work that I made when I'm here. And it's in the back, and after this presentation, I'll be happy to talk about process techniques with anybody that wants. However, I would like to share one of the projects that I worked on here. It's my lace forest. This was envisioned as an installation, and it started years and years ago when I went to the Monterey Aquarium in California and saw the kelp forest. I thought, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to swim through a kelp forest? I have 2 strokes, drowning and dog paddle. So I'm never swimming through a kelp forest, but I could create an environment that looks and feels like swimming through a crepe forest. So from the start, I started getting lots and lots of lace, cutting them into strips, and hand stitching each strip onto upholstery cord. From the start, I had this magic goal in mind. Wouldn't it be great if I had 50 strands? Well, I didn't have 50 when I showed it for the first time. This is 30 of them at a gallery on Martha's Vineyard Island. This summer, I was fortunate enough to have the work, The Lace Forest, accepted into Fiber Arts International, a triennial in Pittsburgh that is widely considered the most important juried textile show in the world. I've been trying for years to get into it, so this really made me happy. And there were 46 of them in that show. So here at Explore the Arts, I am happy to say that 47, 48, 49, 50, and 51 have been stitched. I also want to share with you that Montana has impacted my studio art practice in other ways. It has allowed me to do things that I had denied myself. I had read all about natural dyeing. I even read this big scientific book by a lady in Australia called India Flynn, who convinced me that I couldn't do it. But I got to take a natural dyeing workshop. Oh, this is the one that's out of order. This is when I knew the lace forest was a success. But these are the 3 local people, your neighbors, who are teaching natural dyeing. And I got to take natural dyeing too. How is that going to impact me? Well, here is another one of my installations. It's called Loss. 2 sleeping gowns and 2 little cotton shifts for babies that are hand stitched with lots of red thread and suspended above 3 doll cradles with lots of rolls of lace. I call this Loss, representing the loss of motherhood, childhood, I miscarried, estrangement, through death, through distance, through adoption. But now I think about the stash I have at home of the other vintage materials. Wouldn't it be lovely to be able to stain them with plant life from my own environment? I live in a textile mill village. Wouldn't it be lovely to be able to express through fibers the hardship of life as a textile mill worker through using the actual land and plants to stain other vintage material? I also got to make a stone mat by Jennifer Cothier. Barbara List put me in touch with her. It was amazing. I never considered mosaic because I thought you had to use grout. She doesn't. And if you want to see one, she is represented right here. And I've been walking over one. These are appropriate for exterior presentations all month. They're wonderful. And I will never look at stones the same. I also last Saturday got to take a jelly plate printing class. Had no idea it would be that easy or that fun. But best of all, Pam Beer, who taught the workshop, whose work is in this room with us, represented here at Explore the Arts, taught us how to fold paper bags. Instantly, I thought of lots of pages from antique texts that I have. Cotton rag pages, folded up into bags. That will happen. But I've also met all sorts of wonderful people. Like, this is the Cook Plus Book Club from Chapter 1, who invited me as a guest, and I got to sample all those pies. And that was, that was terrible. Oh, what a night. And through Open Studios here at Explore the Arts every Monday from noon to 3, I got introduced to Diane, who invited me to visit her llamas, and I'm taking back the short llama fur with me, a little bit of Montana for future work. But also, I've hiked several of your trails, taking selfies along the way. Hiking and enjoying your environment gives me the time to soak up nature, to replenish my soul, and remind me that beauty is everywhere, and it's easy to find here in Montana. And it is my responsibility as an artist to put more beauty in the world by translating my experiences into art. So I thank you all for everything your location has shown me, and especially for you showing up here tonight. So that's it, and I take questions now.